Hey, what's going on? Eric Bach here. Welcome to the Eric Bach Show. And today we're going to jump right in and talk about why you're not leaner or getting more jacked despite working hard in the gym. You've probably heard this before. You've probably said it. I know I have. Many people have. I want to lose fat and build muscle at the same time. Sounds great on paper. Ultimately, that's what we all want: stronger, leaner, highest performing version of ourselves. But in reality, this is the exact reason that so many people stay stuck spinning their wheels in the gym, sweating, sacrificing, grinding, doing all the right things, yet not really seeing results from as hard as they are working. And I know the same feeling. Again, it was the same thing I was always trying to do for years. And what we have to understand is building muscle and losing body fat, they are complementary goals. When you lose fat, it's going to support better muscle growth because you're typically going to have better insulin sensitivity and a number of factors that we will jump into. When we build lean muscle, we improve overall resting metabolic rate, and typically meaning we will burn more calories even at rest and support better long-term fat loss. But because these things are complementary does not mean we can really maximize either one effectively. And so jumping right into body recomposition, what is it? Well, body recomposition is that simple process of building muscle and losing fat at the same time. And many people view this as the holy grail of fitness. But the catch is it's really only possible to do this under very specific conditions. And if you are not really fitting into one of these buckets in these specific conditions, you're probably wasting your time or at least going way slower than you could be if you focused all your attention on one goal. So let's break down specifically who can pull off a recomp. And the reality is most people can't do it, but here are the exceptions. You see, if you're a beginner, you're new to training, and it could even be you've been training for years, but you have not been training correctly, then you can create a recomposition because your body is going to be hypersensitive to all of the things that you're doing. And so if you're getting adequate protein, if you're getting stronger in the gym, you'll probably lose some body fat and build some lean muscle because your body is going to be so hyper responsive during this particular time. And so true beginners, first time in the gym, yes, it can happen. Also, people who have been probably training for years or eating incorrectly, who have not taken care of their recovery, hormone status, and all of a sudden you start nailing all those components, that can also happen. But for the vast majority of people, they operate with this same beginner mindset, expecting the workouts, the approach that worked when they first got into the gym to continue working long term. And it really just leads to a lot of frustration and feeling like I'm doing everything right, but not getting results. So beginners, can they recomp? Typically, but those conditions are important. The second time period would be detrained lifters. So let's say you've been lifting for years, but maybe life got crazy. You took 6 months off. I recently talked to a gentleman who was ex-special forces. He trained for 15, 20 years, and he took about 9 months off of any training. His career accelerated. He became a father. And so all these things happened all at once, and he just pulled off completely, right? But getting back in, muscle memory is real, right? If you've built that strength, if you've built those neural connections, your ability to regain lost muscle, to get leaner faster, is going to be better than somebody who's probably never really trained before, or somebody who's been training consistently yet feels like they are plateaued. So you will have somewhat of a recomposition impact if you were detrained and then you're getting back into the game. Now, the third condition, I've touched on this a little bit, but it's people who train incorrectly. You see, a lot of people spend time in the gym, but they're not really doing the right things to create an actual response with their body. And most often what I see is people who are hammering cardio, random circuits, constantly changing programs. And when they finally switch to a structured strength and hypertrophy-based plan, what happens is, well, because they're actually sending their body a consistent signal with what they're doing in the gym, in the way that they're eating, in the way that they're recovering, voila, it's like you're making those newbie gains again. So just because you've trained for a while does not necessarily mean you're more than a beginner if you have not been training correctly. Incidence number 4 would be people who are overweight and obese. When your body has higher body fat, your body can tap into fat stores for energy while building muscle. So kind of a double win. So if you're significantly overweight, you can have a recomposition effect. And then finally, people who are enhanced. If you're on performance enhancing drugs, if you're starting hormone replacement therapy, TRT, those are different things than being on just performance enhancing drugs and doing a massive steroid cycle. But obviously they're going to make a difference, right? So when a hormonal environment makes a shift, your body's ability to build lean tissue, to lose body fat is going to be enhanced, right? So the crucial element to think about in all of these cases, if you're natural, if you're past the beginner stage and you're trying to build muscle and lose body fat, you're going to make a lot faster gains. And hence, even in any of these situations, anybody who goes all in one particular goal is going to make faster progress in terms of seeing their physique change than trying to straddle these two different things. And let's break this down now a little bit further. You see, muscle gain and fat loss. Even though they can support each other, they are inherently two opposing goals, right? Building muscle demands a calorie surplus and smart training. Losing fat demands a consistent calorie deficit and intelligent training so you don't lose your hard-earned lean muscle. And so, as you can see, we have two things on the opposite side. And if we're trying to optimize for either one, we end up optimizing for neither one. And the more advanced that we get with our training, with our overall approach, if we do not centralize this focus in any one direction, that progress is going to be so much slower. And giving you an example here, fast muscle growth would be 0.5 to 1 pound of muscle in a month, right? Fast fat loss, 1 to 2 pounds in a week. So for most people, they need to lose body fat, right? Hence the lose fat, build muscle portion of it. Losing body fat is 4 times faster than building lean muscle. It's going to be exponentially faster for you to be able to go all in towards losing that body fat. Say for men, getting to that 12 to 15% mark where you can see your abs or you're damn close to it, and then focus on the muscle growth versus straddling, going back and forth with your diet, going back and forth with your training, going back and forth with your recovery, feeling overwhelmed, and probably adding a bunch of shit throughout the mix that aren't necessarily going to help you, right? So those are the things that we need to consider. Now, are you somebody who's truly ready for a recomposition? One way I like to gauge this is looking at strength standards. So strength standards, it seems way harder to say than it really is, but these give you a really good benchmark to know what your training status is. And so I'm going to list off a couple of these, and I think this will be really helpful for you, because you don't have to live and die by a bench, squat, deadlift, so on and so forth. But at some point, you probably should have done some heavy barbell training and gotten good baseline numbers for all of these different things. And so while I list these exercises and these benchmarks off, understand that a squat, it could be a front squat, it could be a back squat, it could be a goblet squat, right? Like we can look at different variations. A deadlift could be a conventional deadlift, a trap bar deadlift, a Romanian deadlift. But here are some pretty simple indications, right? So for men, if you're likely a beginner, if you've been training for 0 to 1 years, if your squat is about 1 times your body weight, so 200 pounds, you squat 200. Bench press, 0.75 of your body weight. Deadlift, 1.25 of your body weight. And then pull-ups, 1 to 3. So if you're primarily around these areas, it's going to tell you where your weaknesses are in terms of strength, but also likely your beginner status. Also, obviously, high levels of body fat are going to make a big difference there. If you're 400 pounds and squatting 400, you're still pretty strong. But again, we want to consider the body fat component of it as well. Now, moving on, intermediate. Somebody who might be an intermediate lifter has lifted correctly following structured programs for, say, 1 to 3 years. And these numbers would come out to about squatting 1.5 to 2 times your body weight. So that could be 350 to 400 pounds. Again, having that capability if you are 200 pounds. Now, I'll give you an example, right? I very rarely squat heavy at this point, but I did for years. So for example, at about 175 pounds, squatting about 405, that's over that 1.5 to 2 mark, right? Now, if I went in right now and I was trying to squat 405, could I do it? Maybe. It might be ugly. I haven't thrown a heavy bar on my back in a while, but understand that these things are going to change. So that context is really important. Bench press, 1 to 1.25 times your body weight. Deadlift, 2 to 2.25 times your body weight. Then pull-ups, being able to nail 8 to 12 strict pull-ups. For the most part, if you could do all of these things in a gym, you would be pretty damn strong, pretty damn ripped, and probably the top 15 to 20% of physiques in the gym. And then finally, advanced. This would be somebody who's probably trained for at least 3 years. Very strong programming, no major gaps in terms of strength and performance, really anywhere. And a squat here might be 2 to 2.5 times your body weight. A bench press might be 1.5 times your body weight. A deadlift, probably 2.5 times your body weight. And then pull-ups, can you knock out 15 strict. And so the point being is, if I'm saying these numbers, and again, they're not the holy grail per se, and you're like, oh shit, I'm way off on all of these to be an intermediate, you're probably a little bit of a beginner. And that's okay. Most people are. It just means you probably don't need advanced levels of programming and crazy diets and all these supplement stacks. And you can make really good progress following a simple program and focus on getting stronger. And inherently, you'll likely build some lean muscle and set your body up for fat loss as well. So that really takes care of kind of determining where your status is. And what I want to break into now is the cold, hard truth about getting shredded, and specifically for men. Most men dramatically underestimate how much fat they have to lose. I talk to guys all the time who say, yeah, man, I just want to lose 10 pounds. And the reality is, for them to get where they want to be able to go, it's more like 20 or 25 pounds. Even contextually speaking, I typically walk around 175 to 180, and I still have some abdominal visibility, right? If I try to cut down to get like photo shoot shredded, we're talking 160, 165, right? So even when, and that's the difference between like lean and shredded, and realizing that most people aren't trying to get shredded like that. But I think that context really helps. And so what we have to understand when it comes to fat loss is for most people, the first 10 pounds is pretty easy. You lose some water weight, glycogen, some body fat, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm feeling pretty good. But what happens with most guys is they're like, oh shit, man, I've got more to lose than I thought. And so that next 10 to 15 pounds in most cases is where that real transformation happens, both from a body composition standpoint, but also it's a really good reality check. It forces you to really evaluate, how is my sleep? How are my food choices? How is my training? How is my actual response to hunger versus cravings, which are going to ramp up during that point? So we need to consider what it's actually going to take to get to that point. Now, when it comes to determining which direction you want to take, it's crucial to understand that there's always going to be trade-offs. And that's one of the hardest things to accept when it comes to changing your body. And so if you're still committed to saying, you know what, I want to focus on building muscle and losing body fat at the same time, even though it's going to be an exponentially slower process, the trade-off is it's going to be a lot slower. Your room for error in things like your personal life, right? Being able to go out, have drinks, have good food, the amount of focus you're going to have to do in terms of like dialing in the recovery and all the little details is going to have to be a lot higher if you want to make visible progress doing a recomp. So you have to accept that trade-off that is going to take more time and more focus. And the reality is, for most guys, they can't. And I don't blame you if that's you. Not at all. Because when you look at the way that everything is marketed for social media, for supplements, for training, for nutrition, for all of this shit, everything comes in a 30-day, 60-day, 90-day type deal. And the reality is for most people is that progress comes so slow and they're not tracking enough metrics in terms of like training performance, in terms of actual body composition, in terms of their macros to really gauge whether they're progressing or not. And they start to make changes. They start to change their workouts. They start to, add new things. And pretty soon they're following the program that's dramatically different from what they actually started with. And that leads to self-sabotage. So the trade-off you need to consider when it comes to recomp is accepting that progress will likely be slower. Now, if you decide, hey, based on what we've talked about so far, losing fat is going to be the best thing for me, great. Just understand that you're probably going to have a little bit more to lose than you anticipate, and that muscle growth is going to be likely on pause. If by extension you preserve all your muscle and or gain a little bit, understand that that's a byproduct of you training correctly and getting enough protein on a consistent basis when you probably weren't before. And that's awesome. If that happens, absolutely fantastic. And I've seen it happen in many instances. But just understand you're not going to add, half an inch to your biceps while losing 20 pounds of fat. That's just not going to happen. And finally, if your focus is going to be on building muscle, accept that there will be some fat gain. Building muscle is 4 times slower than the fat loss process. It's going to take time, and it's going to take consistency in terms of getting calories up, right? And seeing that scale weight go up. And you're probably going to have some feelings of like, oh man, I'm starting to feel a little bit fluffy. That happens. But if you go right back to cutting right away, your body has no reason to hold on to that lean tissue. And you just, waste a shitload of money on food, which we don't want, and you waste your time. So choose your goal, own the trade-offs, commit 12 to 16 weeks to one of these phases, not 12 to 16 days, if you want real results. Now, I always give my clients a couple things to consider when it comes to picking these phases, right? So a few things to look at from a body fat percentage. If you're in the shower and you look down and you can't see your dick, you need to cut fat. If you're over 20% body fat, you need to cut fat. If you're not close to seeing your abs, you need to cut fat. If you're lean, if you have some level of abdominal visibility, if you can see a bicep vein going down, right? That's a pretty good sign that you're lean enough to be able to build muscle strategically. And if you're somebody who's new, detrained, you've been training incorrectly, you can recomp. I'm specifically going to focus on getting you in a fat loss phase with high protein. Calories are going to be balanced and training primarily for strength and muscle. And we can have somewhat of a recomposition process, but we have to be able to track things and assess to go down that route and really maximize that progress. And so ultimately, the good news for most guys is they're probably closer than they think. It's not a lack of effort that's preventing them from building muscle and losing fat. It's because they're following broken strategies. They're doing way too much high intensity interval training. Maybe they're doing class pass and jumping from thing to thing, always changing exercises. Their diet's really inconsistent. And when we have that inconsistent signaling between the training and nutrition and overall recovery, well, ultimately you can feel like you're doing everything right and not see results. And the reality is it's because that plan is not fully in alignment with what your goals are. So my final takeaways for you here. If you really want to build your best body, yes, you can lose fat. Yes, you can build muscle. You won't be able to maximize either one if you are trying to straddle both at the same time. For the vast majority of guys, that means, hey, focus 100% on getting lean, getting enough protein, and training for strength. And by extension, you will lose some fat, preserve and or build some lean muscle. Once you're lean enough and you build the habits to be able to maintain it, voila, then you are in a really good spot to be able to maximize your progress. So, hey gang, thank you so much for checking us out. If you enjoyed this particular episode, whether checking out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or over on YouTube, send me a DM on Instagram at Bach Performance with the keyword lean. I will break down the simple steps that you need to take in order to look great naked without living in the gym. If you got some other value from this, hey, please drop us a 5-star review and share it with a friend. We do not do any external advertising. We try to keep this stuff free and clear of sponsors so that you can enjoy the experience and maximize your time. All right, I'll talk to you soon. Have a great day. Train hard, train smart.